On any massive construction project, there's one single clause that really dictates the entire chain of command for all the specialized work. Yep, we're talking about subcontracting. And we're going to dig into Clause 5 from the industry's go-to rulebook. Let's break down what it says, and more importantly, why it's so incredibly critical for everyone on site. So, our guide for this is the FIDIC Red Book, the 2017 edition. This thing is basically the global gold standard for construction contracts. And tucked inside, Clause 5 is the absolute key to understanding how the project's entire team structure really works. So, here's our game plan. We'll start with why subcontracting is so essential in the first place. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty rules that FIDIC lays out. We'll also look at a special case called the Nominated Subcontractor, then unpack the all-important responsibility principle, and wrap it all up with a practical field guide. All right, first up, let's tackle the big question. Why do we even need subcontractors? Why can't the main contractor just handle everything themselves? Well, the simple answer is that modern projects are just way too complex. It's kind of like thinking of the main contractor as a film director. The director has the grand vision and manages the whole show, but they don't personally operate the camera, design the sets, and do all the crazy stunt work. Of course not. They hire specialists for that. It's exactly the same in construction. You need your go-to experts for deep foundations, for complex electrical grids, or for that tricky high-rise facade work. Those experts, they're your subcontractors. Okay, so we've established why these specialists are so vital. Now let's dive into the specifics of how the rulebook says they can actually be brought onto a project. What are the rules of the game? FIDIC kicks things off with a super clear definition, right from the horse's mouth. A subcontractor is anyone formally named in the contract or officially appointed by the contractor. The key word there is formally. This isn't some casual handshake deal, it's a documented official relationship. And that's the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. And here is the first major rule. The contractor does not have a blank check to hire whoever they want. For pretty much any subcontractor they bring on, they absolutely must get the engineer's prior consent. This is a huge oversight mechanism built right into the contract. Now, sure, there are a couple of exceptions, like for your basic material suppliers, or if a subcontractor was already listed and approved in the main contract from day one. But for pretty much everyone else, there's a process you have to follow. So what's that process look like? Well, FIDIC lays it out with very clear, time-bound steps. First, the contractor submits all the details on their proposed sub. Then the clock starts. The engineer has a 14-day window to raise an objection. And here's a really critical detail. Silence equals consent. If you hear nothing back in those 14 days, they're considered approved. After that, there's one final step, a 28-day notice before that subcontractor can actually start work on site. The whole system is designed to keep communication flowing and everyone on a schedule. Okay, now that we have the general rules down, things are about to get a little more interesting. Let's talk about a very specific type of subcontractor, the nominated one. This is a special category, and believe me, it has its own unique set of rules. The difference between a standard and a nominated subcontractor is all about one thing: who does the choosing? See, a standard sub is the contractor's pick. They find them, they propose them. But a nominated subcontractor is handpicked directly by the employer or the engineer. They then instruct the contractor to hire that specific firm, usually for a highly specialized part of the job where they want a particular expert they trust. And this, of course, brings up a massive question. Is the contractor just forced to accept this choice no matter what? What if they have some serious concerns about the company that's been nominated? And the answer is a resounding no. FIDIC actually gives the contractor the right to raise what's called a reasonable objection. But you can't just object because you don't like them. The grounds are specific. You can object if you believe the firm isn't competent or financially stable enough, or, and this is so important, if their proposed subcontract doesn't properly protect the contractor. This means it has to pass down all the same obligations that the contractor owes to the employer. It's a vital self-defense mechanism. All right, let's pull back from the details for a second and focus on what is, without a doubt, the single most important concept in all of Clause 5. It all comes down to this. Regardless of who is doing the physical work, who is ultimately responsible? Where does the buck stop? I want you to really let this line sink in. The contract says the contractor is responsible for a subcontractor's actions as if they were the acts or defaults of the contractor. That phrase is incredibly powerful. It's the legal glue that stops a project from falling apart into a massive finger-pointing blame game. Simply put, a mistake by the sub is a mistake by the contractor. End of story. So here's the absolute bottom line. The main legal contract exists between the employer, the client, and the main contractor. That's it. The subcontractor has a totally separate contract with the contractor. This creates an unbreakable chain of command and responsibility. The buck always stops with the main contractor. Okay, so we've been through a lot of theory and contractual language. But what does this all actually mean for you, the civil engineer who's out on a busy construction site with steel-toed boots on? How do you put this into practice in the real world? Here is your practical cheat sheet. Number 1, always get the engineer's consent in writing, no verbal agreements. 2, document everything the subcontractor does, the good, the bad, and the ugly, performance, quality, progress, all of it. 3, always remember that responsibility principle. Their failure is your contractor's failure. And finally, know your rights. If a nominated sub seems like a bad fit, understand and use that formal objection process to protect your project. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Knowing that you can delegate the work, but you can never, ever delegate the ultimate responsibility, how does that clear line in the sand change the way you approach managing risk and quality out on your site? That right there is the core lesson of Clause 5. Thanks for tuning in.